Long before anyone called this place Norway, there were hunters wearing animal skins and carrying stone tools, moving along the fjords the way a person moves through a home they have always known. Archaeologists later named them after the sites where their bones and blades were found, the Fasna and Spaka culture. We do not know what they called themselves, only that they were bold, following reindeer and salmon, and a stillness people still seek in wild places. They settled where the land cracked open into the sea, those long, deep inlets that look almost deliberate, as if carved into the coastline for shelter. For these early Norwegians, the fjords were not a barrier, but an invitation. The sea fed them, carried them, and on its worst days, took them. Yet it never became their enemy. It became something closer to family, the first lesson of the land, never forgotten. In Norway, you do not fight the water. You learn to live inside it. That relationship would, centuries later, harden into something unshakable, a national instinct passed quietly from parent to child, long after anyone remembered why. The centuries moved slowly, and around 4000 BCE, the wandering hunters began to settle. Farming arrived, and with it, permanence. People buried their dead with care and carved images into rock faces, boats, animals, human figures with arms raised as if caught mid-gesture for eternity. These carvings, scattered across what is now a UNESCO World Heritage landscape, were Norway's first book of history, written not in ink, but in stone. There was no alphabet behind them, only intention. Each figure seems to whisper the same defiant sentence across 6,000 years. We are here. We exist. Stand before one of these petroglyphs in a Norwegian museum today, and the distance collapses. These were people curious the way you are curious, afraid the way you are afraid, laughing and grieving in ways you would recognize instantly, driven by the hope that someone, someday, would know they had lived. Around 1800 BCE, a wave of transformation rolled north, the Bronze Age. The metal rebuilt society from the inside out, sharpening tools, strengthening weapons, and giving rise to more intricate communities. In Norway, the era bloomed into genuine cultural flowering. The rock carvings of Bohuslan and Østfold tell of a people with elaborate religious rites, skilled boat builders, and likely trading partners across distant seas. But prosperity rarely lasts unchallenged. Around 500 BCE, the climate turned against them. Crops failed, resources thinned. Villages that once rang with children's voices fell silent, and communities that had coexisted peacefully began to compete bitterly for what remained. It is tempting to see this hardship as a forge. When nature refuses to give, a people learn to take. Historians often trace the roots of the Norwegian character, stubborn, inventive, unsentimental about hardship, to exactly this moment, the first sentence in the story of the Vikings, written centuries before any longship touched water. The Iron Age, beginning around 500 BCE, reshaped Scandinavian society. Small tribes bound themselves into larger alliances, stronger chieftains rose, and warfare wove itself into daily life. Slowly, the stage was being built for the chapter of Norwegian history the world would never forget. It is the spring of 793 CE. On the coast of Lindisfarne in northern England, monks move through morning prayers in the hush of dawn. The sea is calm, deceptively calm. Then on the horizon, dark shapes begin to rise, shapes that should not be there. Long ships, their prows carved into dragon heads, slide toward shore as though the ocean itself had built them. Armed men leap into the surf with axes and swords. Terror moves through the monastery like a current. This single morning would be remembered as the opening line of the Viking Age, an era that made all of Europe tremble. History has not always been generous to the Vikings, remembering them mostly as raiders. The truth is richer. They were also merchants trading from the Baltic to Byzantium, explorers who reached North America 5 centuries before Columbus, and master shipbuilders whose craftsmanship still astonishes naval engineers. They carried more than weapons. They carried law, literature, and a functioning society. The Norwegians turned west to Ireland, Scotland, England, Iceland, Greenland, and eventually a land they called Vinland, today's Newfoundland. Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red, set out from Iceland and found land on the other side of an ocean nobody in Europe believed could be crossed, 500 years before Columbus. Imagine the courage this required. No charts, no compass, no certainty that anything but water lay ahead. Headwinds, towering waves, the constant threat of storms that could swallow a ship whole. No promise of return. And still these men sailed on, knowing only that staying still was its own kind of death. Why did the Vikings turn to the sea? The answer lies in the land itself. Norway is mountainous, with painfully little farmable soil. As populations grew, young men with no inheritance faced one real option: the sea, offering escape, wealth, the chance to become someone. For a younger son with no land, a ship was a future. This single fact of geography reshaped an entire continent. Inside Norway, the Viking Age was also an age of unification. Harald Hårfagre, Harald Fairhair, became the first to bind Norway's scattered tribes beneath a single crown. Legend holds he swore not to cut his hair until the task was complete, and the people, moved by the vow, came to believe in him. The Battle of Hafrsfjord, around 872 CE, marked the turning point. Harald's victory gave birth to Norway as a unified kingdom for the first time. A nation can receive its birth certificate in the middle of a battlefield. Christianity arrived gradually, carried by kings like Olaf Tryggvason and Olaf Haraldsson, later Saint Olaf, through persuasion and force. Saint Olaf died at Stiklestad in 1030, but his death was only the beginning of his story. Miracles were soon attributed to him, and he became Norway's patron saint. From that moment, Norway was no longer simply seafaring tribes. It was a Christian kingdom, able to sit beside the royal courts of Europe. After the fire of the Viking Age, medieval Norway began to mature. The 11th and 12th centuries marked its golden age. The cathedral at Nidaros, modern Trondheim, became the spiritual heart of the country, drawing pilgrims from across Scandinavia. King Håkon Håkonsson, in the 13th century, carried Norway to the height of its power. Iceland and Greenland willingly placed themselves under Norwegian rule, and the kingdom became one of Northern Europe's dominant maritime powers. The capital shifted to Bergen, where Hanseatic merchants wove the kingdom into Europe's commercial network, and Norwegian ships carried fish abroad and returned laden with luxury. Fate arrived without warning. In 1349, a ship sailed into Bergen's harbor, carrying English sailors dead or dying. It had not brought trade, it had brought the Black Death. Having begun its march in Asia, the plague swept across Europe like wildfire and reached Norway's shores. The numbers are almost too large to absorb. Between a third and half of Norway's population perished within a few brutal years. Villages emptied, farmland was abandoned, and a social order built over centuries collapsed within a single generation. This catastrophe broke something in Norway, badly enough that the kingdom could no longer resist what came next. In 1380, King Håkon VI died, and with his death, the kingdom's fortunes shifted again. His son Olaf, whose mother was Margaret of Denmark, inherited both crowns. When Olaf too died young, Margaret ruled both kingdoms herself with remarkable skill. In 1397, the Kalmar Union joined Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, and slowly Norway disappeared into Denmark's shadow. Norwegians would later call these 4 centuries the Long Night, not because anything especially terrible happened, but because Norway stopped being entirely itself. Danish replaced Old Norwegian in literature and official documents. The elite traveled to Copenhagen to serve the royal court, and decisions shaping Norwegian lives were made in a foreign capital. And yet, among the farmers and fishermen who never left, something quieter persisted. They went on speaking Norwegian, telling the old folk tales, holding to the conviction that this land belonged to them. The emperor sat in Copenhagen, but the heart of Norway never stopped beating in its mountains and fjords. During this period, the Protestant Reformation reached Norway. In 1537, Lutheranism became the kingdom's official faith, severing the church from Rome, a shift as political as spiritual, since Denmark now controlled it directly. Monasteries were stripped of property, but from this upheaval came something valuable: the school. Lutheran doctrine held that every believer should read Scripture, demanding literacy, a seed that would grow into one of the strongest root systems in Norwegian society. By the early 19th century, Napoleon had set Europe ablaze, and the Great Wars redrew borders with terrifying speed. Denmark allied itself with Napoleon, a fatal miscalculation. When he fell, Denmark fell with him, and under the Treaty of Kiel in January 1814, was forced to hand Norway over to Sweden. Its own voice never consulted, but Norway had no intention of accepting this fate quietly. In spring 1814, Norwegian leaders gathered at the manor of Eidsvoll, farmers, clergymen, officers, and merchants, side by side as equals, and in weeks drafted one of the most progressive constitutions of their era. On May 17, 1814, it was adopted, and to this day the date stands as Norway's most cherished national holiday. The document was genuinely radical: popular sovereignty, separation of powers, freedom of the press, ideas most of Europe's monarchies would not embrace for generations. But Sweden's army stood waiting beyond the border, and an unwanted union took shape. Though Norway kept its constitution intact, holding onto it as the soul of the nation for the 90 years that followed. For 90 years, Norway lived in Sweden's shadow, but the nation was not sleeping. Poets, novelists, and composers searched for a distinctly Norwegian voice. Henrik Ibsen wrote plays that captivated the world: The Wild Duck, Hedda Gabler, A Doll's House. Edvard Grieg's music carried the sound of fjords and mountains. Fridtjof Nansen sailed uncharted oceans toward the North Pole. Together, these voices said something simple: Norway exists, Norway is alive, Norway is its own. Tension peaked in the late 19th century over consular representation. Norway, with its vast merchant fleet, wanted its own diplomats abroad. Sweden refused. In spring 1905, the Norwegian parliament, the Storting, unilaterally declared the union dissolved, a decision that echoed across the continent. It was bold, perhaps reckless, Sweden's army stood ready, but European public opinion sided with Norway. Negotiations opened in Karlstad, and Sweden ultimately agreed to let Norway go in peace. On June 7, 1905, Norway stood as a fully sovereign nation, one not through bloodshed, but through dialogue. A single question remained: monarchy or republic? A referendum settled it. The majority chose a king. A Danish prince named Karl took the Norwegian name Håkon VII and arrived with his English wife, Maud. Norway now had a monarch it had, in effect, chosen for itself. The first years of independence pulsed with ambition. Norway industrialized. Railways stretched across the landscape. Schools multiplied, and its shipping fleet grew into one of the largest merchant navies on Earth. A people who had spent centuries in someone else's shadow were finally running forward. Norway remained neutral through the First World War, though neutrality came at a price. German submarines sank its merchant ships, and hundreds of Norwegian sailors died at sea. Yet what was coming in the Second World War would dwarf even that grief. April 9, 1940. Dawn. German warships slide into Oslofjord. Aircraft fill the sky above. Operation Weserübung has begun. Hitler has invaded Norway, a country that had formally declared its neutrality, and in a single spring night, occupation arrives like a thief no one had been watching for. But Norway did not surrender quietly. At Drøbak Sound, Norwegian coastal artillery achieved one of the war's most dramatic early victories, sinking the heavy German cruiser Blücher, a stunning blow that bought precious time, giving King Håkon VII and his government the chance to escape Oslo. The king made his way through Sweden to England, where he led a government in exile. The BBC carried his words back to occupied Norway. "We are fighting, we will not surrender." Across the country, resistance took root. Vidkun Quisling, the Norwegian fascist who collaborated openly with Germany, became a permanent symbol of betrayal. So much so that the word Quisling entered English as a synonym for traitor. But against this treachery stood thousands of Norwegians who chose instead to fight, many giving their lives for that choice. 5 years of occupation followed. Fear, scarcity, relentless resistance. Norway's resistance movement became one of the most active in occupied Europe, gathering intelligence, carrying out sabotage, funneling support to the Allies. Teachers resisted en masse when Germans tried forcing Nazi ideology into classrooms. Over 1,000 were arrested yet refused to bend. Churches resisted, athletes resisted. The entire country had quietly agreed to resist together. Among the most extraordinary operations of the war was the sabotage of the heavy water plant at Vemork by a small team of Norwegian commandos, severely delaying Germany's nuclear weapons program. These men skied hundreds of kilometers through 40 below temperatures to plant their charges, knowing it might cost them their lives. Remember their names: Knut Hauklid, Joachim Runneberg. On May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered. King Håkon VII returned after 5 years in exile, and the news swept across the country like sunrise breaking after the longest night imaginable. People wept openly in the streets. Strangers embraced as though they were family. Church bells rang in towns that had not dared to ring them in years. Norway was free again, but freedom had a price. Roughly 10,000 dead, ruined towns in the north, a wound carved deep into the nation's spirit. After the war, Norway rebuilt with collective determination. The post-war Labour government laid the foundations of the modern welfare state: public health care, games but active policy. Norway had arrived at a simple, profound conclusion. A strong society is one in which no one is left behind. Norway joined NATO in 1949, anchoring itself within the Western Alliance, yet never stopped insisting on its own judgment. In referendums in 1972 and 1994, Norwegians twice voted against joining the European Union, wishing to cooperate with Europe without dissolving into it. The largest gift fate had in store for Norway came not from the land, but from beneath the sea. In 1969, the Phillips Petroleum Company, drilling in the North Sea, struck an enormous oil reserve, the discovery of the Ekofisk field. The drilling crew who first saw the results could barely believe what they were looking at. From that moment forward, Norwegian history split cleanly into two eras, before oil and after it. What followed was just as remarkable as the discovery itself. Norway had read its own history carefully. The Norwegians understood, with unusual clarity, that natural resources mismanaged bring not prosperity, but corruption, the so-called resource curse that has crippled other oil-rich nations. In 1990, Norway established its sovereign wealth fund, built on an idea both simple and quietly revolutionary. Save the oil revenue and spend only the returns it generates, not for today, for tomorrow, for generations not yet born. That fund today is the largest sovereign wealth fund on earth, holding more than $1 trillion. Every Norwegian citizen, from newborn to centenarian, effectively holds a stake in it. The product of financial discipline from a nation that takes its children's future seriously, an inheritance deliberately passed from one generation to the next. Today, Norway sits near the top of nearly every global measure of human well-being. The United Nations Human Development Index has repeatedly named it the best country in the world in which to live. But where exactly did this success come from? Was it only the oil? Norway's education system, from kindergarten through university, is free. Every child, whether born to a fisherman or a corporate executive, holds an equal claim to the best education the country can offer, a quiet form of respect. Its healthcare system follows the same principle. No one should be denied treatment because of poverty. Norway also plays an active role on the world stage. The Nobel Peace Prize is awarded each year in Oslo, arguably the world's most consequential prize, handed out in a capital of barely 5 million people. Norway has mediated some of the world's most difficult conflicts: the Middle East, the 1993 Oslo Accords, Colombia, Sri Lanka, and many others. Why Norway? Because this is a country that genuinely believes in peace, not as a slogan, but as policy, a conviction shaped by hard-won historical experience. This is a nation that knows intimately what war actually tastes like. From hunters along the fjords to a kingdom built in fire and faith, from 4 centuries in someone else's shadow to a constitution written in a single defiant spring, from a darkness that nearly broke it to a fund built for grandchildren not yet born. Norway's story is, in the end, the story of a people who refused to disappear. Every generation faced a moment that could have ended them, and every generation chose instead to keep going. They were never given an easy land. They built instead an unusually thoughtful one, and they are still building it today.